Three, two, one.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Subtle Asian Voices. And today we're going to talk a little bit about interracial relationships. And we have two very special guests with us today. We have Phil and we have Alex here. And they're going to tell us a little bit about themselves and then take from there. Alex?
My name is Alex from Florida. I'm 31 now, and I've been in an interracial relationship for the past 11 years and married for 3.
Cool. Perfect. And I guess Phil?
Hey guys, my name's Phil. I also live in Florida. I've been in my current relationship almost 3 years now at this point. And yeah, it's good.
Sounds good. And what kind of culture is she part of?
So I'm Chinese American and my girlfriend is Caucasian.
Perfect. And for everybody in the audience, if you have any questions about interracial relationships, put a comment below and we will try to answer them as best as we can. And besides all that, let's get to it. All right, guys. So in terms of your family, right? How do they feel about being in a interracial relationship? And I guess we'll start off with Phil first, since I think your background's a little bit more, I guess different. So let's start off with you first.
Yeah. So personally for me, I don't think family was too big of an issue. My parents have always made it known that the most important thing for them is that they want me to be happy, whether it be with, whoever I decide to date, whoever I, end up with marrying. For them, I don't think ethnicity to them has ever been a big thing. And I think that really leads back to me that it doesn't make a difference, if they're white, they're black, they're Hispanic, whatever culture they're on, as long as that I'm happy, I think my parents are happy.
Aw, that's so sweet.
That seems pretty progressive of them too, huh?
Yeah. Do you feel like they ever expressed a preference, or do you feel like they're like, you know what, just bring a nice person home as long as our sweet boy is happy?
I mean, as long as they're not like robbing my house and stuff like that at night, then I think we're okay.
I think you could set the bar a little higher.
And Alex, how did your family feel about dating a Chinese man?
So when I first brought Anthony into the fold, it was clear that they didn't hang out with Chinese people, or most of them. Yeah, no, no, it just felt clear that they weren't even sure how to react.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was felt clear that they'd never really hung out with Asians in general, and didn't seem to know almost how to interact with them sometimes. So it was a little clunky in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But now they seem to feel like Anthony ups our family's cool factor.
Okay.
Every once in a while they'll look around and be like, thanks for rounding out the racial numbers for our family, Anthony. And be like, yeah, Anthony, good job.
Okay, interesting.
So there's that. That's how the reaction has been so far.
Okay, well, do you find difficulty in speaking with his parents at all, or?
Oh, with Anthony's parents?
Yeah, Anthony's parents.
Yes, his mother. So his father's not really in the picture, but his mother definitely. I think even in our relationship, she retired, and so she doesn't use her English even more so. So it's getting rustier over time, and so I find it's better when I have a translator. But she does pretty well, and for the most part, we can communicate okay. I would say it's kind of unfortunate because it's clear she's a very smart woman.
Mm-hmm.
But more complicated concepts, she can't necessarily talk to me in English, and so she would have to have somebody there to translate.
Right. Well, Phil, what about your girlfriend talking to your parents? How's that interaction going on right now?
I think it definitely poses its challenges. Because obviously, I think she wants to have a bigger relationship with them, and language is a barrier, so she can't like formally like talk to them and have like a really long conversation. But I think like the most important thing that she does is like she makes like a real effort to try and see what she can get across from them, and that's a really important thing for me, at least, is like she'll come and she'll talk to my mom, and of course our moms, Chinese moms, are always asking like, have you eaten yet, are you hungry,
Right.
like and she answers it, and it's a very humble thing. I think for my parents it was kind of a learning curve too, because I think in American culture, for her, she loves hugging everybody,
Right.
So, for us, we're like, we don't touch me,
Oh
so,
man, this
so,
sounds like my experience. You're describing my experience right now.
So, yeah. So for her, she'll come and she'll hug my parents, and my parents are first at like a little like not unease, but like they're humbling about it. They appreciate it. They understand what she's doing, but it is definitely very foreign to them. It's not common.
Yeah, I would have appreciated a heads up from Anthony that they weren't huggers, because I remember the first initial hugs are like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this. And I was like, I didn't understand like why it was so awkward until eventually I had to like learn from other people that like, oh, like they don't normally hug and they're just humoring me as the white lady in their house and them trying to be gracious.
Right. So like, do you translate for your parents, like, or like to Jess, or you just like, how do you like?
So I don't have to translate that much. I mean, honestly, my dad's like, he has okay English. It's broken English, but it's enough to get by. It's very minimal. My mom sometimes, I have to translate a little bit, but I mean, I think there's so much more that you can read off of somebody, not verbally, like what they're saying, but just like their expressions and their body language and stuff like that. Right. So I think, my parents are very humbling. Jess is very humbling. So they can see, the happiness that everyone has. So it generally is, it's good.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So for Alex, like, what's your like favorite part of like Anthony's Chinese culture that you feel like you're really proud of sometimes?
I mean, there's a lot of things. So I remember it coming up, and I'd be like, Anthony, I can't even imagine who I would be if I had dated not like a Chinese person, like so someone without a Chinese background. I feel like there's like a worldview shift in terms of like being part of like another ethnic family, and trying to see the world and like personal values, I would say. And like, I don't know how to describe it. I would say it's definitely opened up my mind in terms of different styles of living and different ways of thinking, and how people prioritize those ways of living. And I would say that it's caused me to reevaluate how I was brought up.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I definitely remember like during my first relationship, like I was also in an interracial relationship, and I was dating a Cuban / Nicaraguan, and that culture was completely different from my own, and that was like really eye-opening for me. And at first, it was like my first relationship, and I was super scared. I was like, he was a big dude. Her dad was a big dude, and I was like this skinny Chinese guy, and he was, with his eye just telling me, "Hey, you better watch out." I mean, it's like every other culture, you're dating my daughter, you gotta be aware, you gotta be aware of who you're dealing with. And yeah, it's just like, usually when you're dealing with like Asian parents, like they're not as like upfront with you dating their kids. They're kind of like in the background, kind of telling their kids that, hey,
I completely disagree.
Oh wow, so what's your story?
They might not be physically intimidating, but they are intent on getting their way. Like,
okay. Right,
like there are many ways to control a situation, and they use what they have. You know what I mean? Like, so,
okay, give me an example. Like, tell me some story or something.
You know,
no.
Like,
okay, fine.
I mean, you're aware I have a Chinese mother-in-law, and you know what that means. By the way, I do feel like there's a difference between a Chinese mother-in-law when you're dating their son and versus like when you're dating a daughter.
Okay.
So my mother-in-law has made it kind of clear what the hierarchy in the family should be, considering that this is her son. Also, he's an only child, so there's that little dynamic too. But yeah, no.
Okay. Well, Phil,
she's made it clear what she thinks the order of operations should be in terms of authority.
All right. So Phil, does your girlfriend, like, you know, is she aware of this hierarchy that Alex is speaking of here, or?
Yeah, does she know her place?
Define place. I'm kind of uncertain what you mean by her place.
I guess for myself, right? As an example, there was one time we were having dinner. I don't even know how it came up, but my mother-in-law looked me in the eyes and she said, Chinese mother-in-laws live with their sons. And she's like, I'm sorry, no matter what, you know? And so she made it clear that it didn't matter like my opinion on it. Didn't matter Anthony's opinion on it. If she wanted to live with us, she would do it when she pleases. And I was like, all right, I guess. Like,
that sounds like Crazy Rich Asians, like that kind of like, you know, mother-in-law dynamics there, huh?
Yeah.
So Phil,
so definitely nothing like that ever.
What?
Yeah.
Are you saying I'm getting the extra bossy version of the Chinese mother-in-law?
Maybe.
Seems like it. Like my mom's pretty chill about.
Yeah, my mom's like very chill, very nice. She's very humbling, like all the time. I don't think she's ever. I've never heard her say anything like that. So.
Well, so you aren't an only child. Does that factor in at all?
It could be. Yeah, I am. I have a brother and two sisters, so we have 4 children here, and then but I am the youngest. So I mean, you know, I am considered the baby of the family. Yeah, and I mean, my brothers and sister will say I am the favorite, but I don't think so.
I mean,
well, do you feel like your older siblings have more expectations from your parents, or is it like the same? Like, what do you feel like?
I think I have the most expectations.
All right, that's fair.
Just because my brothers and sisters, they weren't born in, you know, here in America. So like they're, you know, they had to come over here and learn a lot more than, you know, I did. I started here off more American and learning everything here. So I think it's always been up to, you know, anyone who's born here in America to like try to learn the curve a little faster, a little better.
Right. So like Phil, since you're like dating like a Caucasian woman, like does it make you more aware of your own culture? Like, since, you know, you grew up probably more, you know, like in a non-Asian area. So that does it make you more aware of like being more proud of being Asian, or does that not really go into effect or something like that?
Not necessarily. I don't think so. I mean, I think I've always been proud of who I am. I think anyone that you speak to who knows me is, you know, I'm proud of who I am, like whether, you know, my culture or what I look like or this or that. It's never been a problem for me. I'm happy on who I am. So I don't think that's ever been a case, you know? Right.
So, but did you have to, like, you know, tell your girlfriend about, you know, certain like cultures or certain like traditions that she should be aware of, or like is she like, you know, learning about it, or are you trying to, you know, teach her a little bit about it to, like, you know, maybe, you know, for future, you know, traditions like that?
I mean, some things, but it doesn't really get too far into details. I'm not the type of person to force anyone's like values on top of somebody. You know, everyone has their own right for what type of way they want to live. So, I mean, she understands, like, I have my own traditions, my own customs and stuff like that. So she respects it, and I do the same for her.
Right. So Alex, like when you first started like dating Anthony, like, was there anything like shocking about about his culture that was like just like completely like different from what you were, you know, that, you know, And was it something
Yeah.
crazy like that?
Yes, 100%. And it still comes up. Like, it's not like 11 years later, there are still things that I'm like, what? Oh, okay. Like, so I would say, like, for me, Anthony, I do think that, like, in terms of being part of your, like, your ethnicity or culture, there's like a spectrum. I wouldn't say I'm very Italian. I would say, like, I'm probably like a 2 on a scale of like 1 to 10. And same with thing like being Cuban. Like, I'm like a 2. Like, I have an abuela. Like, I'm aware with the cuisine.
Yes.
I'm like, we eat grapes at New Year's. Like, there's things like that. But otherwise, I was raised in America, in an American city, and Anthony was as well. Like, so we both like a lot of our childhood was spent in Coral Springs, and so I relate to him a lot because we were surrounded by similar demographics and values. And I do think that influences who you are a lot, regardless of who your parents were. So for me, sometimes Anthony, like, I describe it as, you're an American raised by Chinese people. And so like that's what he feels like to me. So there'll be tendencies here and there. So for the most part, I felt like he and I shared a lot in common. And then his mom, though, or like the older generation, they were definitely Chinese people from China. Like, if it's Chinese at a spectrum, his from 1 to 10, his mom's like an 11. You know what I mean? Like, she's like very Chinese.
Right. So like, regardless of like cultural differences, like basically if your upbringing was pretty common or you have similar interests, then usually being, interracial doesn't really matter as much, right? Since if you guys both have very common, upbringings, then your story.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I would actually say that we actually share a lot more in common than I would say that we have differences.
Right.
I mean, there's some like surface level differences here and there, but in terms of saying like for example, my family on my Cuban side, we're new immigrants. So in terms of his family are also sort of new immigrants. His family came from Taiwan. And so he's first generation. I'm kind of first generation too, on my mom's side. And so there's a lot of that commonality where we understand each other and what it is. And, and my family, like my grandparents were very poor growing up. His family were war refugees. And so there's certain things that come out of that that we understand in terms of now between our grandparents and like what their values and way of thinking and way of living was.
Okay. So with your family, like, how is Anthony's relationship with your family? Like, has he been able, like, need to learn Spanish or anything?
No, I mean, so I don't even really know Spanish. Like my grandmother did like watch me a lot. So there was a time where I was probably fluent, maybe like when I was 3, and then I lost it over time. But and she herself has lost like English over time, know. So even I sometimes, like, she'll be talking to me and I'm only getting like half of it because it's in Spanish. And so yeah, no, they can't communicate at all. But I think you can get across friendliness. You can get across goodwill. And I feel like a lot of times when we get together, it's really about just good food and share, like, enjoying each other's company, and like that's about it. And that's fine. Like, it's pretty good.
Right. And how about you, Phil? So like, was there anything that your girlfriend found different when she was with your family, or something that she was like taken aback by?
Yeah, I would love to talk to Jessica about this. I feel like she and I would bond a lot.
Like things like she found uncommon in my family that wasn't like regular?
Yeah, like something that like she spoke to you about, like where she feels like, man, this is different, or something like that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, the most interactions we usually have with my family is, I mean, we love to eat. I mean, Chinese people, that's one of our biggest traditions. Like, we go out to eat, we go to dim sum, we go eat food. I have the benefit that my girlfriend loves Asian food. She loves Chinese food. So it's a very good segue for her not to be like, afraid of the culture. Good. So when we do go out to eat in places and stuff like that, she's super happy to, eat like a shrimp dumpling or, like a hagao or, stuff like that. And I mean, I don't think it's ever been like such a shock for her. I think the only thing maybe is like, she was just like, I don't think she understand like how, maybe like how welcoming they would be, because like in my family, like, we want you to try everything. Like, our culture is like, I want you to taste a little bit of everything. I want you to try this, see what you think about that. And, she's good enough where she'll try anything to see what it's about, and I mean, for me, Norman will know, like, food is very big to us, and we love that part of our culture. And I mean, that's like the best way you can really understand someone else's culture is like eating some of their food and stuff like that.
Right.
Oh, so like, so sweet.
Would it have been like a deal breaker if, like, your significant other didn't enjoy trying, your cultural foods? Like, would it have been like a deal breaker for you if all they wanted to eat was, burgers and French fries?
I don't think so, because again, I'm a little bit more American, so I mean, I do like burgers and French fries. But I mean, there are things like she tries and she doesn't like, and that's perfectly fine, because I do not like them either. But I want her to. I
bitter
want her
melon
to
with with like an egg powder. What is no?
Okay.
I don't even know what that is, and that sounds disgusting to me. So I wouldn't even try it. I mean, I was a picky eater growing up. So, I mean, a lot of the stuff, like, my parents, like, love to eat, like, I would never eat. It terrifies me. So, I mean, I think that's something where it's easier for me to bond with over Jess about, just because, like, I'm like, yeah, I don't eat that either. So don't be frightened if you don't want to eat it either.
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's some crazy stuff that I don't really eat. Like sometimes, like, frog legs, I wouldn't even eat. So
I've had frog legs. But
yeah,
I would say
aren't bad. I've had them too.
Yeah, they taste regular. They're fine. I would say food has been a real bonding experience. Like, Anthony and I, on our first date was when he told me that he had never had a cannoli before. And I was like, what? Like, it never occurred to me that someone was never like, I was like just so entrenched in like Italian baked goods that I was like, wait, no, what are you talking about? So we went to like an Italian restaurant, and then we went to Italian bakery after. And we just sat in the parking lot, and like we just ate like all these Italian pastries.
Oh, that's cute. That's really cute.
So that he knew what they tasted like. We don't really like. I don't even like cannolis, but I was like, no, you have to eat like cannolis. I don't even like them.
All right.
And as far as Chinese cuisine goes, I would say that it's changed my palate entirely. Like the American style Chinese cuisine, I'm like, ugh, it's so sweet, like it's garbage.
Yeah, I agree with that. But seems like we have a question from Katie Ho. So, like, for you guys, like, was this your first interracial relationship, or you've had other trials at interracial relationships?
This was my first one.
Alex, you want to answer first, or you want me to go?
You're welcome to. I thought I just answered. It's my first one. Like.
Oh, that was your first one? Oh, okay. I mean, I've dated interracially before. It's not. I haven't had a relationship. I've had like a few relationships, because I think that's like a important thing for me. It's like, having a relationship with someone is something, I don't want to say sacred, but it's like a big deal. You know what I mean? But I mean, I've dated outside of my race before. It's not a big learning curve or a big jump or anything like that. I think if two people are compatible, then it should work, right?
Right. Well, like, let's say like you weren't born here, and you weren't Americanized. You think like it would have been more difficult if you were more of a an international student, or some kind of like somewhere that was not born here, and you were kind of like born in a different country, and your English was not as good. Do you think that would have hindered your relationship with another culture, right? Like, let's say like since your upbringing wasn't as similar, so would you think that would have affected it?
I mean, of course. I mean, I think a level of attraction is like what you're attracted to. I mean, so I mean, if you're coming from like mainland China, you're going to have a different opinion of what you're attracted to than what someone is here in America, you know? So, I mean, definitely, like if I was born somewhere else, I might find different things. But I mean, for me, that's just, you know, it's not a game changer. You know what I mean? For me.
Yeah.
So I've always been about like, you know, connect with a person, you guys have similarities that you guys can talk about, you guys are like best friends, like all those kind of things, like those are more important to me.
Yeah, like for sure. Like for me, like when I was like, you know, trying to date a girl from another country, and like that was a really different thing. And like even though we have a similar, you know, background, our cultures were just completely different. Like she was more of a, you know, like a true Asian person, and I was more of an Americanized Chinese person. And it just created a lot of tension because it was a lot of like things that were lost in translation, and that made it really difficult because I'll be trying to explain things in a way that's, you know, very conducive to our relationship, but I would have to, you know, dumb down my language a little bit so she can like understand, and that really made, you know, the meaning of my words a lot different, and it was be a lot of fighting and a lot of like misunderstandings, you know. And I really feel like it's important, you know, to know that if you need to understand each other's, you know, like love languages and each other's, you know, culture, you know, languages too, just to understand the misinterpretation of a word that they might think is, you know, wrong, and you think it's totally fine, but they might think it's completely different, you know.
Yeah.
So
I
like
mean, so I would say in terms of like expectations from a relationship, or like the things like that you value, like truly value, being on the same page is important for like any relationship, but then adding a language barrier when there's like a lot of nuance in certain values, you know, like, yeah, that definitely sounds like a huge hurdle in terms of dating in America.
Definitely. So we have seems like we have a question from Tabitha. So like,
Hi, Tabitha.
Her question is: have you ever noticed a specific kind of public perception from passerbys, etc., towards your relationship?
Yes. So I before Anthony, I dated one other person, right? So and he was the white person, and so I felt like we did not attract as much attention as we did when I started dating Anthony. And I think a lot has changed in 10 years. You know, so back when I was first dating Anthony, I do felt like we attracted a lot of attention, a lot of eyes. And he didn't notice, by the way, and I did not. Wow. No. So the thing is, like, I sometimes feel like Asians in general will track, right? Because there's what, like 5-6% of you in like the United States in terms of demographics. So for some people who did not grow up with that, the sudden change in demographics in an area, like, I feel like you guys attract attention in terms of like novelty. Like, I'm not even sure.
I definitely feel that. Like when I was dating the Nicaraguan girl, like I would be walking along the streets at, you know, Las Olas or somewhere around to a restaurant or something. A random guy would just come up to me and say, "Oh man, you are one lucky dude." And I'm like, "Man, you are dating this hot girl." I'm like, whoa. Like, you know, usually like, you know, like you don't really see,
I would have been like, yeah.
Yeah,
I would have been like, yeah, she is lucky to be dating me. That's what I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I felt really good that, you know, that I'm dating, you know, someone that's not part of my culture, and I'm getting like, you know, like props for it, you know, because I'm dating, I guess, a girl that's not part of my race. Because usually they don't expect, I guess, an Asian guy to date outside of the races. So like, I guess it's like really eye opening for them, and they would just like give me props, you know. But then, of course, the other side of it would be like, you know, why are you dating this guy? You know, you can be dating me, blah blah blah. You know, like there's a lot of like, there's like you know, like a lot of like one-offs or like, you know, bad negative stuff, and then there's like, you know, positive stuff as well too. So that was like kind of like weird, but like,
do you feel like that affected your like self-image at all?
No, because like I know
relationship?
for me, I was like, yeah, I'm good enough to be able to get this non-Asian girl. So I was like really like, confident about myself that, oh wow, I got
not gonna
a
lie,
girl that's not Asian.
that makes me a little sad. Like,
I was like, wow, I was like, yeah, I got
no,
one.
like white women, we're the same, like as any other like women type. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're just saying she was particularly attractive person. I'm just saying you should have your own, like, I don't know, Norman, like you're a catch. Like whoever ends up with you is going to be a lucky person. Like you are a genuinely like good person. And so it's just like, it's like with Phil saying like, oh, like I know my worth.
All right, so Phil,
she's lucky to be with me.
So Phil, have you seen any negative feedback from other people when you're, dating a white girl?
I've never heard anything. I mean, I don't know if it's just personally me. Like no one ever just comes up to me and has ever said anything like that. I've never heard any like bad feedback or like, oh my God, I can't believe she's dating him. Like no one says that kind of stuff to me. Like, and I don't know. Maybe they're afraid. I don't know. I mean, I'm confident with who I am, and I'm fine with that. I know what I bring to the table, so that's fine. And
I will say,
if anyone has anything to say, they could say it to me.
Being with Anthony and being out in public in general, it almost I get a sense of like almost being like Asian adjacent. Like I sometimes see, I guess, what you guys are talking about in terms of being treated like a foreigner. Like so, like people will ask him like, oh, like where are you from? And he'll be like, I was born in Chicago. And they'll be like, no, like really, like
right.
And I'll be like, you motherfucker. Like sorry, no. But I feel like you guys, and so, or they'll start speaking to him in like random languages. They'll say like, oh, I know Korean, and they'll say like, 안녕하세요, and then I'll be like, he's not Korean, boo.
Yeah.
He doesn't know any Korean. Get out of here.
I think Anthony might be a little bit nicer than like how me and Norman might be.
Yeah, definitely.
We might not get the.
Oh, he's not nice at all. He starts to be like.
Might not get the same.
He starts straight up ignoring them. He starts pretending they don't exist. And I'll be like, and they'll be like the cashier, and I'll be like, dude, we still have to complete this transaction with this person.
Right. Like I feel like, you usually see a more like Asian girls dating interracially, but you don't really see, guys dating interracially as much as you would find out in the world. So I feel like, do you think that because like maybe confidence would have something to do with being able to attract the other race? I think for us, right, for us who have been in an interracial relationship, like the confidence itself is what allows you to be able to approach, a girl from another race, right? Like, what do you think, Phil? Like, how does one like us, a guy like us, be able to, go up to a non-Asian person and try to get a date out of them? How would you?
I mean, it doesn't mean to. I mean, I think it's the same thing for any girl. I mean, regardless if she's Asian or not. I mean, if you want to go talk to a girl, like you just need to be confident about who you are, what you want to say, telling them that you're interested. I mean, I don't think there's any like different tactic or being someone who you're not. You just need to be who you are, because I mean, like it's nice for like, oh hey, like maybe I can land this girl in the beginning right now, but if that's all you're looking for, that's not going to get you anywhere far. So I mean, like to me, I think you just need to just be confident, know what you want, know who you are, and if that's what they want, then that's a talk that you guys can have.
Yeah, definitely. Like the key, as a guy, you definitely need to be confident in who you are, and then just not be afraid of just asking. Like what else you gotta lose? Just yes or no. So definitely that's the key to dating any girl, regardless of race. But it seems like we have another question from Tiger Lily 489. They're saying, I know that for some Asian families, racism is real and present. Do you think that will continue? And if not, what do you think will cause the change? So I guess one of you, whoever can respond to that question, I guess, because it seems like I mean, it is kind of true sometimes where in the back of everyone's mind, like a parent might, say, oh, you shouldn't be dating so and so because of their skin, and it might not tell you in front of your face, but Asian people, they do like to tell you, say it behind your back. So do you think it's, pretty prevailing still, or do you think there's some kind of change going on? Or
so maybe I'm the one to answer that
okay.
because of like my family is not the Asian family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think from our side, I do think that a lot of what my family seemed to know or was able to draw on came from the media.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the older people in particular, uh, I mean, if you go back and you look at what there was to draw on, it was a caricature. It wasn't what Asians are really like, or not the full spectrum. And
Mm-hmm.
to this day, I have actually discovered that I need to be careful what stories I share with my family, because I think they struggle a little bit with the nuance in terms of, say, like, particularly with China, because, my husband has Chinese background. So, like, the Chinese government versus the Chinese people from China versus Chinese Americans. Like, sometimes I have to put it in terms with them. I'm like, so we're Italian American. Like, what is your relationship with Italy? Like, what is it's basically like almost non-existent, like you are more American than you are Italian, and there's certain things that will color like our living, like we have lasagna or like baked ziti at Christmas, which other Americans or different ethnicities will not have, but otherwise, like, our way of thinking and who we are and like our values and our allegiance, like, it's a spectrum. And so I think they struggle with that. And so I am now careful to pick like what I'll say about, like, for example, my mother-in-law to my family, because then I think it fuels the old style media caricature, and like they don't get the nuance. Like, I won't even like do an Asian accent, like if I'm like if I'm pretending to be able to on the things that she says about Anthony, I'll only do it for his cousins, because they know and their aunts, and like they grew up with their aunts, and like in no way are the joke is that it's her. It's not the joke that Asians are the joke. That's not what it is. And I feel like sometimes my family struggles to separate the two.
Right. And also sometimes I feel like, Asian families, like being Asian, like when they were, growing up in Asia, like it's a very, singular, race. Like it's only like whatever they see was just, Chinese people or Asian people or whatever kind of people they were, growing up with. And once you, move over to America and you see all these other people around you, you're not familiar with other races anymore. And you kind of like, get a little taken aback of. So sometimes, you're a little afraid of what the other race has to offer. And that kind of, adds to that kind of fear of interracial dating in Asian families, because they think, they're not familiar with how the Asian cultures are, and they're scared of that they're not going to understand that, family is very important, or some kind of fear that they have that if their child is dating some other culture, then they won't, understand that they might get, thrown away or something.
Yeah.
And
It's definitely good, I think, to be open. Like, you have to be clear, like in a relationship when you are from very different cultures, to be clear about expectations. I mean, that's true about like any relationship. But I would say there are certain differences that are important in terms of the structure of a family that I didn't necessarily know, and I didn't know how much Anthony adhered to. Because I do think like there's a level. And he actually said once that he thought that I was more familial, like had more familial piety than he did in some respects.
Okay.
And that like how much I would do for my family, and how important it was for me to like pitch in to make sure that they're healthy and happy. he felt like I had more of that than he did, and that he actually interacts with his mom and does more for his mom because of me, because I'm there encouraging it. I will, and so I do think that it is important to be on the same page with it, because the number one thing that was a big difference and a surprise for me was years into our relationship, I suddenly realized that Anthony thought that like if his mom wanted to live with us, that he would do it. You know, he said that, you know, he and his mom are often at odds with each other. They're often very different personalities, and you know, she can be a very bossy, stubborn person, and he's very stubborn in his own way. And so I was like, how do you think that's going to work as roommates, buddy? Like, what do you think is going to happen? And he was like, but that's what a good son does.
Right.
And I was like, I get it, but like, do you think you would be happy? And he's like, I mean, not really. I mean, like, all right, well then, like, maybe like we can own 2 halves of like a townhome and she can live on one side. Like maybe, like, let's talk about this. Is there like a middle ground?
Yeah, like
but that expectation was something he had inside, and from very, very young. And I was like, maybe we should have talked about this before I fell in love with you to the point that I might live with your mom.
Yeah, I mean, it's very common for, you know, the oldest son to, you know, get the parents into their family, and
the only son. He's the only one.
Well,
I can't hand him off to his brother. He's the only one.
He's the only. Yeah, he's the only child.
Option.
That's what makes it really hard. Yeah.
It's tough, but like, you know, it's like expected of us to, you know, even if we're not happy, like it's expected for us to, you know, accept our parents into our lives once they get older and less and more frail, you know. So
yeah, and for myself, I mean, my expectations of like a family dynamic actually, I think, caused conflict with me and his mother. And so like I didn't really understand the dynamic between parents and children in like Chinese culture. Like the more I think I learned and was like part of it, it felt the more like there's not necessarily the closeness, I guess, that I expected from my upbringing. It seems almost more professional. I describe it sometimes like there's almost like a script that they're following. Like, I am your parent and these are all the things that I do for you. And then you are my child. These are all the things that are your responsibility. And that's kind of how it felt like. But it didn't, but like if I asked his mother, like, oh, like what are Anthony's hobbies? I think she would struggle to answer. Like, I don't think she'd know. And I would actually share more with her about Anthony's life, and because he wouldn't really talk about like what was going on in his life with her. It just didn't seem like relevant. And usually her questions to him would be about work, about have you been promoted yet? Like, how's that happening? You know, there seems to be a very specific thing she was interested in that were almost like about like merit, like what badges of merit have you accomplished? And then, but other like details of like him as like a person, she didn't seem like as interested in.
I see.
And so that was weird to me. And so I think I tried to be close to her. Like, I think that was my expectation in terms of like my upbringing was like, oh, you develop like a close relationship with your mother-in-law. Like, you like, that's what your job is as a daughter-in-law. And I think she did not like it. Like, she was like, we're not friends. Like, that's what the kind of vibe I was getting. She's like, we're not buddies. Like, why do you like, I would say like, oh, like, maybe we should go out and have dim sum like once a month together, or like you could come over our house or whatever, like let's try to do this once a month. And she's like, we'll see. Like, I was like, oh,
okay,
never mind.
All right, so Phil, like what are your thoughts on like any like differences that you saw in, you know, growing up wise, right? Like where how your girlfriend grew up and how you grew up as a child. Like, what did you see as a like a striking difference in how you guys grew up that you noticed that made you how you guys, how you are now,
I mean, for us, I think something that we really bonded about and was really easy for us is that we did have very similar family values. Family was big to us and we cared about each other's families. And she understands that, like, because I understand what Alex is saying. And it's like, I get it, because sometimes even Jess will be like, she wants more of a relationship. She does. But the thing is, there is that barrier and that causes that little bit of a rift. And for her, sometimes she will take it like a little bit like personally and be like, oh, maybe they don't like me or something like that. But I don't necessarily think that's the case. It's just because there is that barrier that, that's just how our parents are like. I mean, to say, my parents, to even answer some of those questions, like, for us, it's not about like, our parents are like, they just want to make sure we're happy, that we're doing well, that we're being successful and stuff like that. And as long as like all those things are taken care of, that's what they care most about. And then for Jess, like, I think she was just very happy that we had similar values, because I think if our values were different, it would be a much different conversation we would have to have. That would be something very different for each other and something we would, possibly, have to like fight about. But I think because like family is such a big thing to us, and, we were like, not to say we were raised in the same way, but I think like, obviously I think for me and her, we're always been, the type of people like we have to work for anything we have to get. I tell her like, I was raised in a restaurant, I worked in a restaurant a lot, I'm very humbling to make about any money that I can. And, for her, she said, she's worked at all these other different kind of jobs that she had to make money. And it's stuff like you find commonalities about that you guys can actually bond about. So, I mean, for us, I don't find it as a weakness for us, but I mean, we find it as a strength,
Okay. Well, seems to go on a little lighter note, like during the holidays, right? Like, how would you guys spend, the holidays, right? Like Chinese New Year, like are you guys, happy about the?
Well, it's super simple for me because we don't have turkey because we're Asian. So I go over her house because they have fried turkey, and that's a win-win.
Okay.
And then, but I mean, we. For us, we have like holidays, let's say like even Christmas or something like that. We've understand like, hey, we have two families. We're going to try to do both. So, I mean, for me, again, I love to eat. So I love the fact that I could have two meals. So for us, we'll go to like maybe dim sum or something in the morning. And then in the afternoons, we'll go back to her family and we'll go have whatever other meal. So, I mean, we understand like, it's a shared experience. And I think the most humbling thing too is that I think my parents and her parents both understand like, oh, if you want to go over there to spend this holiday with them, they totally 100% support it, because they understand like it is a holiday and you should be able to experience it with both families. Like if we can't do two families on one day, then maybe we just do one family one day and maybe a family another day. But I think that's a good, compromise.
Right. But now, like, what was your experience like receiving that first red envelope? Like, what was that like? Like, how was your reaction of getting that red envelope money? Did she have any kind of, differences on it?
I mean, I think she was happy. It was just, a little bit of money.
Though, right? It's a little different.
Yeah. It was different, but it wasn't like, it wasn't like a huge surprise. I mean, because like for me, I give her a little bit of like foreshadowing about like things that are going to happen and stuff like that. So she has an idea of like what's going to happen and stuff like that. So it's not like a huge surprise for her. I mean, I think for her, I think the biggest thing is like, she's like, oh my God, your family likes to eat so much. Like they like to go out to eat and like
she's met you, right? Like,
that's what I'm saying.
50% of your activities.
Like we don't have like those type of parties. Like, you know, I think in very traditional sense, a lot of people have like, I don't know, let's say like birthday parties, or like they go out to like picnics, or, you know, like different things like that. But like us, it's like any holiday, it's like Father's Day, it's Mother's Day, we're going out to eat. You know, it's like my dad's birthday, we're going out to eat. That's
definitely your love language. Like,
yeah.
So for like my mother-in-law, I knew I was like that she liked me when she was like, "Oh, do you think Alex will like this? Should I bring this food for her?" And I was like, "Yes." She shows her love with food. I'm in. Like,
that's good. So Alex, like, how did you feel like when you first like received that first red envelope? Like were you surprised by it too, or
so they're kind of like a little intermittent with the red envelopes. It was a little weird. I'm like, I'm a grown up. Like, I'm a grown up. Because I heard that this was for children, and I was like, ooh, what?
Right.
Why do we get this? And I don't know. It was definitely. I mean, I was appreciative, but it was also just like, oh, okay, all right, thanks. That's nice. Like, am I supposed to give you something? Like, what am I supposed to give you?
Right. But now that you're married, like, have you been, you know, giving out the red envelopes to like the younger people in the family?
We did. We did for the first time. I loved it. I was like, yeah. And then so here's some things where I feel like Anthony doesn't always know what like the traditional thing to do, and and sometimes I'm like, he's like, I think sometimes you know more about Chinese culture than I do, because I Google it, like, oh, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
And then apparently like 8 is a big deal, like, because of it's like punny, like you guys love puns, and so you'll take a pun. And it was like, I think like
this is new to me.
$88 and like 88 cents, like it's like extra lucky or whatever. Yeah. And so if you want to give them extra luck, you give them a certain amount. And I was like, all right. The little children, like, you get $8.88. You're not getting $88 as
because eight sounds like you know like rich, like money, and you know getting rich, you know. So that's really important.
Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely a lot of fun. I think, you know, any cultures, the way they celebrate is a lot of fun. So I'm perfectly happy to include more holidays and more times to eat fancy food into the year. Like, that's great.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it definitely seems like being, you know, open about each other's, you know, cultural, you know, differences, like, would definitely help in understanding, making interracial relationships work. If you're not going to tell each other that the nuances of a different culture, then it might not work out, you know, because they have to be able to accept, and like you said, Google, you know, the cultures. You know, you don't Google it, you don't try to understand.
I found so many things. Like, did you know dumplings? Like, so there's like this tradition of where like you eat as many dumplings as you can for New Year's, right? And it's based off of the idea that the dumplings are shaped like silver ingots from like way back in the day, and that if you eat the most, then you're gonna have the most fortune that year. And I was like, did you know that this is shaped like money? We're essentially eating money. And he was like, that sounds like the most Chinese thing I've ever heard.
It is definitely the most Chinese thing. Like, money is so Chinese. And it looks like Phil didn't know about that.
Alex, you probably are more Chinese than any of us on.
It's because I'm looking at it from a Wikipedia.
It
all made sense all of a sudden. I was like, no wonder y'all love dumplings so much. It's the best.
So like for your wedding, like, did you guys have to like do those games, or did you actually do those games? Like, did you enjoy those?
Oh, I'm so like, no, like, so like, I don't know, like, we ourselves haven't been to really too many like completely like Asian weddings. So Anthony sometimes doesn't really know like what is traditional, and then he himself, I always gut check with him. I'm like, is this what you want? Like, what do you want? And it ended up being a very American style wedding.
Okay.
And I was just like, but if I always kept checking in with him, like, that this is what he wants, so this is what happened. You know, if he wanted more Asian, Chinese traditions incorporated, I would have been more than happy to do it. But he was kind of like, no, like, Happy, like, she's like, this is enough money as it is. We don't need to add more chaos to this wedding.
So during that time, like when you guys got married, like, did the family members, just shower you guys with money and gold? Was that something that you guys experienced? Or
I mean, we didn't do a registry, so most people did money anyways.
Because I definitely know, like, for Chinese weddings, like, people just give you tons of gold and tons of like jewelry like at the wedding. So I'm not sure if you had to experience that at all or not.
His mom did ask me about that once in terms of like it came up, I guess, about jewelry, and I'm not very much into jewelry, I guess. And I explained it to her that I'm a very simple person, like I don't normally wear extravagant jewelry. That's just who I am. And she was like, oh, okay. And so I don't necessarily think like his family would have given jewelry anyway, but she definitely, I think, stowed in the back of her mind because she stopped giving me jewelry as presents.
So Phil, now that we're on this kind of topic, like,
I'm totally gonna have that whole Chinese tradition. I'm gonna get all the money in gold that I get.
All the gold. He's gonna wear. He's gonna have one ring on each finger.
Like, those are like super important. Not for the money and gold, but I mean, like, for me, like, I want to keep those traditions like alive. So I mean, I definitely want to do them. I mean, it's a pro that I get money in gold, but I mean, like,
will you do like the those, Chinese ceremony?
The tea ceremony? Do it all.
Right.
All of it.
You can have a busy day.
I think it's important, like, regardless if it's just my culture's like thing, or even if it was like, a different culture's like ceremonies too. I think it's important to keep those things alive, because you don't want those things to just like die out. And it's okay if you want to create new traditions too. But I mean, I definitely want to keep some of the old and some of the new, and something blue. I think I don't know, whatever the saying is.
And is your girlfriend accepting of these kind of traditions? Like, is she aware of them? Or
I think when I first brought it up to her, she was like, what? She was like, because obviously if you've never seen it before, you're like, why are people going to give us money in gold for no reason? You know what I mean? But I'm like, I told her, like, no, you want this. It's a good thing. So, I mean, I think it's just like it's a little bit of a learning curve, and they just want to know more about it. But I think once they understand like the importance of it and, customs and traditions, I think it's a little less, to have to worry about.
Yeah, definitely. Like keeping those traditions alive, like, it's very, important to understand where you came from, right? And once you have kids, stuff like that, like, it's important to teach and hand down those traditions to your kids. Like, if you don't know where your past was from, like, sometimes you won't know where your future's gonna head. So you really gotta try. For me, like, I want to keep my Chinese traditions alive, and by passing them down and telling my significant other about these certain cultural traditions, it's very important to me to have them understand that this is how I want to keep my identity alive. So that's definitely very important for me to
that's very sweet.
Because like, if my significant other doesn't understand why we have to do this tea ceremony, or where we have to kneel in front of the elders, and because that comes with the whole familial family stuff, and so in terms of like, Phil, your girlfriend, like, how does she feel about kneeling in front of somebody?
Have you told her that part?
Yeah, the kneeling part is very like different from other cultures.
I mean, I honestly didn't know that part, so I mean, that's new to me. I got bad knees, so I don't know if I'm going to be kneeling.
We could put a pad down. It's fine. Make it work.
Put a pillow down. You can definitely put a pillow down.
Well, I mean, like, if that's what the tradition calls for. I mean, I've been to like, like I said, I had brothers and sisters, and they got married a while ago when I was much younger. So a lot of the things I don't remember. I remember some of it, but I mean, I'm open to learning more about it. And I mean, if that's what is tradition, then I'm not one to break it,
Mm-hmm. So like in terms of like the languages, right? Have you guys tried to learn at all, like with each other, like, or have you guys?
So Phil knows English. He's pretty spot on with that.
Yeah,
okay. Like my grammar is like, so.
So you wouldn't be an English professor. Like you don't want to teach.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
I have tried Mandarin. It's very difficult, and I'm very bad at learning it. But I will say it is very important too, Anthony, that our children learn Mandarin. Like, so as far as like culture for him goes, or like passing on, something from his background, he wants our children to learn Mandarin. And so I do think there will come a day where I will have to learn at least some of it, or at least be very, very encouraging and supportive.
So like in terms of like, any tips that you guys have for other people who want to try interracial relationships, like what would you tell them to be aware of? This will be our last little tip for everyone while we are, at our little time limit.
I mean, the only tips I have is like, if you like someone, you like someone. I don't care if they're whatever ethnicity they are. If you like them, then just go for them, and if they're attracted to you, then just go for it. I mean, you shouldn't let that be something that hinders you from someone that you are attracted to and that you want to learn more about. Like for me, just, hey, you like them, you like them.
Hey, go get it, right? Go get it. Don't be scared.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. I mean, if they say no, then hey, on to the next one. Okay.
Right.
You don't have any choices of what you're attracted to, and then just keep on going.
Yeah. And I'm piggyback off Phil. Like, I think just having the shared values is the most important, and knowing what that is just being very open and communicative. And like valuing each other's families equally and valuing each other's traditions equally.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for, joining into this discussion, and everybody join us next time for our next episode.
Yeah,
see you guys next time.